Hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to Ask the Alums. This is a series of knowledge sharing session wherein we try and get our alumni from various industries and functions to share their insights about the industry. So the topic for the day is role of managers after COVID-19. We have already discussed, debated, and discussed a lot about the COVID-19 situation. So what is the way forward and what is the role of managers? Because that we believe is going to be one of the major roles. And we have an illustrious panel and moderator today who are going to discuss about the same. So we welcome you all. Over to you, Jayashree ma'am.
Hi. I'm not going to say the famous lines. Am I audible? Because I guess we are all audible. But that has become the new term for every Zoom call. Thank you so much, Arvind. Thank you so much, Simsr, Himanshi especially, for inviting me. It is a privilege to be able to, speak in front of an august audience like y'all, of all our old Simserites. And of course, I have an equally strong panel, very all celebrities in their own roles. What we'd like to talk about, because see, a lot has happened in 2020. And I'm sure all of you have been doing some thinking. You know, one of our surveys that we recently did globally, because I belong to a global PR agency, many of them are concerned not only about the pandemic, but they are also concerned about their own lives, their own safety, and are dramatically reevaluating their own professional priorities. So this panel over here today is going to discuss very few points as to how are managers going to manage this. All right. In terms of giving you all a kind of sequence as to share your thoughts, I will start with Kunal. Maybe if you can help us understand how has this affected your business first, then your people in your own company? What is the HR role that has changed globally from your point of view and in your company? What have you done, in changing your role to manage your people, your talent, your performance appraisal systems, your leadership styles? What have you done? So, and once all the panelists discuss this, I thought maybe I could summarize it for all of y'all and also share a few of my points which come from my point of view and my kind of industrial sector. Kunal, over to you.
Thank you, Jayashree, and thank you everyone for having me on this. Quick introduction, batch of 1996, started off as a banker with Citi, and then over the last couple of decades, I'm part of a cord group. We are an executive search firm, so the point of view is slightly different in the sense that we look at leadership hiring across, and we are part of probably a top 10 network globally called Alto Partners. So what's changed? That's a very interesting question and a very sort of something that I think is debated today in every meeting or every sort of interaction that we have, not only amongst us, but amongst our clients as well, saying what's changed. I think a couple of things, somebody summarized this phase very nicely for us. It is, there are 4 phases to every crisis. There is cry, there is why, there is try, and there is fly, right? Most of us are still stuck in the cry and the why. Why did this happen to me? What is happening? What the hell is going on? But I think most of us, or at least a majority of us, have now moved on to the try and the fly phase because we cannot keep crying and whining about this, right? Most of us, our clients, everybody has seen, I think, something that's unique, right? It's as if 5 years of our careers or 3 years of our careers have been compressed in 3 months. What we have learned, the speed at which certain things have happened, the speed at which innovation has happened in most companies across HR, across our functions is phenomenal. A lot of learnings there in terms of, why did we do this earlier the way it was done? And now it's a very different place to do it. Um, in terms of what's happened specifically for us, I think 3 or 4 things that have happened for us. One is clearly the decision cycle has changed. For a lot of people earlier, as a search firm, most of my mandates would take anywhere between 4 months and 6 months to close, because a lot of it was also dependent on getting the number of interactions through, right? You needed the CEO on board, you needed the board on board, you need some external people on board, and you had to take time from everyone. Now I think over a Zoom call, pretty much that gets done, right? The other piece that has happened, as we call it, is the democratization of the screen. Earlier, to get to the CEO, there were layers, right? There were hierarchies. You had to get through various gatekeepers at various points of time to get to the CEO's office. The CEO is now today sharing the same screen as you are. That makes it interesting. It makes it useful in the sense that your voice is heard straight. There are no filters, right? Third, from an SOP standpoint, from an operations standpoint, every business is talking about the COVID filter, saying if it's worked during COVID, then the same thing is going to work regardless. So I think every new project, every new decision is being passed through the COVID filter. If it comes out on the other side, by all means implement. And I would say the last thing that has happened, decisions have become faster. And the reason for that is earlier we used to wait for data, analysis, modeling, a lot of things used to happen before decisions were taken. I think CEOs in the last 3 months have learned to take decisions based on maybe just 1 or 2 data points and stop worrying about the rest. So I would say this has been what I can summarize in the last 3 months for us. Jayashree, back to you.
That was short and sweet. I really liked what you talked about, the 4 phases. Can you repeat that? We missed your...
Try, why, try, and fly.
Fly. Okay. So, yes, this has become the age of speed. This has become the age of virtual decision making. We have lost, we have reduced our times in moving ahead. What do you say, Parul? What is your approach and what has been your experience?
Good evening, everyone. A brief intro about myself before I share what's been going in my organization. I'm Parul, 2002 batch. Have been working in the banks for the longest time. And it was in 2016 I decided to jump in the new world of e-commerce. Was the HR head for Jabong, and now took on a completely different role as the customer service head for Myntra. So a different industry, and let me say, I completely see Kunal's point in a sense of squeezing 5 years into 3 months, because that's really happened with the newer generations. And I say newer generation because a lot of the employee base in the e-commerce world is a much younger generation, if you ask me, compared to, let's say, a banking world. And for a lot of them, this is the first time that they actually saw a crisis happen. Now, if having come from a banking industry, for example, I had seen a 2008 happening where things just went completely haywire and people didn't know how to deal with it, or may have seen few other ups and downs in a trade cycle sense. But this is the first time when, at least in my company, a lot of 90% of the people had seen any crisis of any form. For some of them, most of them actually, 50% of them doing their first or their second job. So haven't even seen the worst part of an economy, let alone a crisis to that extent. So that was a very big mindset change, because it kind of forced people to start rethinking about the ways we have been doing things. And e-commerce actually, while it seems binary in a sense of doing retail business, actually balances a lot of mini structures internally like any other company. So for example, warehouse or the distribution channels had a completely different challenge to deal with, and in a way they went back to the old IR format. And I'm purely talking from an HR perspective, where the focus and complete ask was on physical well-being. You had to be physically safe to be in a warehouse. You had to be physically isolated to do the deliveries. And that became the focus for that channel. Whereas if you look at the other jobs in an e-commerce, which is your marketing, your running of the website, IT, those are service sector jobs and really could have been done from the home even before. So COVID kind of just made people sit at home and do it from their home. In a sense, while it forced everyone to go on Zoom, I mean, or any other medium which we had been using. For example, we use Slack or Google Do. The fact is, this part of the organization was already used to a lot of online working. So for them, it wasn't so much of a change of a work environment as it was more about now you don't have to really go to the workspace, and the focus started shifting towards mental well-being. So two different parts of the organization and two different focus areas, because the last 3 months have been a struggle in that. Also, what really happened is, what we have to be cognizant of is, because there were no precedents for it, the government also struggled with its rules and regulations over a period of time, and they kept on changing. So for example, in Bangalore, the deliveries were opened after the first lockdown. The second lockdown, the deliveries had been opened. Now, which is an easy say, but as a customer, I didn't know whether I could order or I couldn't. As a company, I did not know how many delivery guys can actually go out. Will the police actually stop them? Do they need the passes? Or in the warehouse, do I need to have 1/3 workforce to do the packaging? How much safety? What all safety do we need to put into place? So because of the changing regulations and the timelines, we also kept on having our own struggles of figuring out what's the optimal model to operate with. And despite the lockdown being up, it took us close to a month's time to really reach a space of comfortable operations. So I'll not say that we have reached a stage of 100% operations. We are still not operating at full capacity. We can't operate at full capacity, as you would be knowing that at any point in time, no building could have more than 1/3 of the employees present. So we cannot have 100% capacity, but it took us that long a time to reach a full operation stage. Post that, I think the second level of challenge started coming in for the entire workforce, which was working behind the scenes. And I'll talk specifically, for example, the area that I'm handling, which is customer care. Now you had COVID happened suddenly. I mean, the lockdown, if all of us remember, 21st of March, that date is etched on our minds. Like tomorrow onwards, nothing is moving. Well, things are on way. They are just stuck on way. The deliveries, the returns, customers are still calling. You don't know what to do about it. In all fairness, because this was a nationwide or a global crisis, the customers were very kind and very patient also. But having said that, as I said, as an organization, we had a lot of struggles to deal with. For example, the call centers cannot operate from home. And for that industry, it was a complete no-go. So even if I want to, I couldn't. The only channel we could operate is email channels or the social media channels, because for that we don't need licenses and you could be operating from anywhere. So as an organization, I think the focus shifted from, what you call as the typical Indian way of doing, which is like the jugaad way of doing things, what will work and what will not work during this time. And all of us had to figure out the permutation combination which works best during that time. It's only now, after 3 months of lockdown, on, off, in some parts on, some parts off, have we reached a comfortable space of saying, okay, lockdown or no lockdown, we can operate. This is what we all do. But what is true, and I'll just kind of put it in a nutshell, that it has certainly forced all of us to rethink the way we have been running our businesses, the way we have been doing certain jobs, not just from a delivery perspective, but also from a regulation perspective. Because what we a lot of times forget is, our work is actually dependent on the regulations, the way they are going. We undermine or undervalue the way the government defines this. And this became very apparent during these times. So, that's been our biggest learning, which is why we are hoping that the new e-commerce policy addresses some of these issues, at least for our industry. And I'm sure, other industries would also be looking forward to certain, changes happening in their way of running.
Fantastic. Parul, I'll come back to you with more questions afterwards, but you all have a spread across the whole country, right? And
Yes.
the lockdown became so severe in different parts of the country, including for us here in Bombay. How were you monitoring this? Because I'm sure you were having a different kind of a treatment for each of the locations.
So, without COVID, also there's a monitoring system, right? We know where the deliveries are going to happen, which distribution channel is going to work today or not work today. So, for example, I mean, floods is an annual event in the northeastern part of the country, and it is still there. So, we know which part
Yeah.
would be impacted. Uh, the problem this time around happened because of the lockdown is we really didn't know because of the changing guidelines. Today Bangalore is on but Mumbai is off. Tomorrow Mumbai is on, Bangalore is off. So we had an internal system to track people and the track deliveries, but what we did from a customer point of view, because ultimately we want to serve the customer, is that we started redefining the timelines of delivery. Because earlier on, while my promise used to be able to deliver, let's say in 2 days time in a Bangalore city, today I know I'll not be able to do it in 5 days, not because I don't want to or I don't have the infrastructure, because I genuinely don't know whether it would be on or whether the guy would be stopped by the police. Because if you would have been reading the news, during the initial days, the police did not allow the delivery guys to even deliver the medicines, especially the
Yeah.
e-commerce
True.
medicine channel.
Very true.
So, from a pure expectation perspective, the first thing we had to do is, rejig our delivery timelines on the website itself the moment we went on. To be fair, during the first lockdown, which is of 21 days, we were completely shut down. So it was, we were engaging with our customers in a different way. We had our web series going on and so on and so forth. But beyond that, when we were having partial lockdowns in some parts of the countries, we had to block those pin codes. We had to follow the news regularly. So if you were sitting in a city like Mumbai, which was off for more days than any other city, you couldn't have ordered on Myntra, to be honest, because your pin code would have been blocked. So
Yeah.
purely from a
That's
action and a system perspective, we had to do a lot of things in the backhand. But the actual delivery itself also took a lot of time, even at the places where it was open, because as I said, there was no guarantee if the gentleman is going out today, he'll be able to actually deliver at your home because of the roadblocks on the way. So yeah, it's been a challenging ride, but I can say that now after 3 months we have reached a space that we have now a sense of control over the whole place. Okay, now we know what switches to put on and what switches to switch off really during
yeah.
those times.
Yeah, so that's about your logistics. I think after this round of everybody sharing their points, we'll come back to how your managers were thinking at these points, because they were all managing crisis. And online was something we were all relying on so much. I know that. What about you, Danish? What has been your experience? You're the youngest in the panel, but I'm sure you've got loads of experience to share.
Thanks, Jayashree. So, quick introduction. My name is Danish and I'm from the 2012 batch. Did my master's in HR, of course. And I'm currently working with Nykaa for the retail business. So, I lead L&D for the retail business at Nykaa. I'm personally fairly new to retail. So, having spent 3 months in the retail industry, we went into a lockdown. So for me, this was a completely, unexpected experience, and the new normal for some time for the retail business. As you know, the moment the lockdown hit, all our stores were shut for 1.5 months. But acclimatizing ourselves to the new situation was a challenge. And in fact, the entire L&D team at Nykaa. So when at Nykaa, the L&D team is divided into two different functions. I take care of the behavioral side of L&D, and there's also a technical product team which takes care of the functional training. So the entire team collaborated together to put together an intervention to upscale everyone and prepare them for the next 3 years on product knowledge. And while doing that, the business process itself underwent a transition. And we, from being a physical retail store, we actually pivoted to the omni-channel model, and with hyper local deliveries. So given that transition, the entire new millennial generation, like Parul said, they have never faced any crisis of any sort before. They just rose to the occasion to demonstrate how resilient they could be. And we even had a sale the last week. If you're aware, we had a hot pink sale for 5 days. And you'll be surprised to know the performance of the organization. The retail arm of the organization was even better than the similar sale that we had in the month of November. And kudos to the entire team for putting up that kind of an effort, wherein you also welcomed customers physically into the store, and orders which were generated online are now diverted to the stores. And so our stores also acted like mini warehouses, and the entire change of both serving the customer and acting like a warehouse showed how capable our millennial generation really is, and how quickly they absorb the change. From my role perspective, the beginning of the lockdown actually gave me an opportunity to. So just before the lockdown, what I had done was I had created the competency model for the organization, and I had also worked on success profiles and defined certain service standards for the organization as well, since I take care of behavior. The lockdown gave me the opportunity to disseminate this information to everybody in the organization in the span of 21 days. So, having done that, that kind of, laid the foundation of what an employee is supposed to demonstrate to the customer. And they'll go more prepared into the field once the store started. And the store started somewhere in the month of May. And as compared to any other retailer, I'm very proud to say that 51 of our stores opened in June out of 68, which was a humongous achievement on the operations and the training front. In terms of my role, the main transitions which I see are, of course, re-looking at the entire employee journey. Now, gone are the days where you would have an induction and an employee joins in a classroom, etc. Now, really looking at the employee experience from that point. And once we had that mindset shift that everything's going to be virtual, we're looking at the entire employee. The different touch points in the entire employee journey, right from induction to the way goals setting is going to be done. How do we identify the critical roles? Now, even that will undergo a complete transition. What was critical to the business yesterday, given the fact that the entire business scenario has changed? Identifying those roles which are critical, the parameters that we'll set for identifying the critical roles itself will undergo a transition. So doing that, looking at the way the new normal has changed the way meetings happen. Now, the other day when we were discussing, we were in fact celebrating this new sale which happened. Managers were talking about how the new normal has made calls at 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning the new normal. And at the same time, explaining to your spouses as to who are you talking to at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the night, the new normal. So, the entire business functioning itself has undergone that challenge. And while I was training people on embracing change, talking about the 7 stages, you go into shock, denial, depression, so on and so forth. While the training is on, I can see that people have moved past the stage and the training itself has gotten obsolete. So, for me also, learning on the go has been a huge challenge from that point of view.
Danish, one thing we can say, lockdown or no lockdown, the ladies want to look beautiful. So Nykaa is wanted all the time.
It's not just ladies anymore. I'm sure it's even the men.
Yeah, it's not. So we don't have a Fair and Lovely anymore. So there's a Glow and Lovely, and we're just
Absolutely.
talking about it much more. Yes.
True that.
Yeah. So talking about a little about myself in the chat, I think Arvind has been putting up all our profiles. I'm the oldest here, and I'm very happy about it because I can give you all a lot of gyan. Um, uh, 30 years as HR, I've gone through various kind of sectors, and now for the last, I've kind of settled down with a PR agency. I'm from the 1988 batch. So it's been quite a walk. Have seen different kind of people through different kind of industrial sectors, and now with a PR agency where the audience or the employee average age is very young. Yes, like you've said, Parul and Danish, they have not seen what a crisis is. But along with these millennials that we have as our employees, I have managers who are all baby boomers like you and me, Kunal. Okay, so managing that gap is a challenge. And when we went into lockdown, uh, along with us, we have about 150 clients. Along with us went in 150 clients into lockdown. So the whole challenge was, do we stop office? Do I have everybody work from home? What if my clients are not working from home? What if my clients are at the ground level? So we had Rajiv Bajaj saying, we don't believe in lockdown, and his operations were on the factory. We had all the financial institutions getting extra active. So the challenge that came in for us is managing employees who are young, who are staying alone, because many of them have come in from different states and different parts of the country, some from the rural areas into a place like Mumbai, managing them. And also at my branches, I had girls like in Bangalore who had come in from Ranchi and staying in Bangalore, all locked down, And what do I do? So as HR, it was not only addressing the crisis, making sure everybody is comfortable working at home. Everybody's been provided with the infrastructure to work from home. And beyond that, what became a larger issue is with lockdown came another issue of your maids not being able to come home, right? So we have 70% of my employees are girls or women. So I had women who had to also do their work 100% and manage the house, right? And I had senior bosses who are men and sitting there saying work needs to be done, which is true because your client is what you have to deliver to. So it became an issue to manage that expectation, to get everybody to think the same. That became the challenge. So the HR role towards the managers had to change. It had to get real time. I was actually picking up the phone and talking to people at all times of the day, talking to girls and boys staying alone by themselves, talking to ladies who have their homes to run with their little children. So there have been little mishaps, but this is what it has taught us. It has given us a new kind of experience. Master, who's in the States, and I say, we have to do the housework and we have to do the homework. They just, office work, they laugh at us because they're doing this all the time. But then for us in India, this is a new way. And I had to get my managers starting to think about new ways of how to give your employee the priority. So it was no longer just client who is the priority, but the manager had to think about his employees, his team. taking care of his team's personal health, workplace safety. Company's values became important because we were losing clients. We also had to go in to trim our staff, which is not a nice thing to do, to cut salaries, which is also not a nice thing to do. But how could I do this, which I had to because clients weren't paying or clients were taking a break because PR is such kind of a business. You had to do this by making the employee who's having a salary cut feel that yes, he is doing something for the company by helping the company reduce, by taking a salary cut. It was very difficult. And when you're trying to reach out to 200 employees across the country, who are the people who are going to speak on your behalf? The managers, you know? So what we are talking about here is how did we get those managers to change their minds? How did you manage it, Kunal? In the terms of with your clients, how did you get them to think more for this new employee who has come, who has taken a birth in the new normal?
So I think, hearing everybody, I think the basic theme that comes through for all of us here, and I'm sure it's true for everyone, communication. There was no other way to do this, right? Earlier, communication was delegated to a few people and they would in turn communicate to the rest of the team. This became an all hands on deck, right? Focus, as always, remains the customer, and I'm sure that's true for all of us. And at the end of the day, the aim was to minimize disruption. There was no way we could not have disruption, but the aim was to minimize. So I'll give you an example. We had a joining happening in the month of April, a gentleman coming in from the US, taking on a CEO role in India via Hong Kong. And he got stuck at the Hong Kong airport when quarantine hit, right? So the entire negotiations with the client, the entire assessment of the candidate, the entire negotiations, compensation, pretty much everything was done while the gentleman was in quarantine in Hong Kong airport. And then virtual joining facilitated in Bangalore. Again, the gentleman comes in and said, look, I was supposed to join in Bombay. I have nothing in Bangalore other than my house. So making sure that, the tools of the trade were provided to him, laptop, connections, something very simple, something which nobody expects you to do, right? On a regular day, it's just, you walk into your new job, your laptop and everything else, the tools of the trade are nicely wrapped up in a red ribbon with a good welcome aboard card, and everybody sort of waiting for your coffee and waiting with everything else. This was completely different. This was the new normal, right? But making sure the joining happened on that day it was supposed to happen. So there are so many stories. We've all heard the Reliance story in Bombay, the Reliance Fresh story, where the residents of the building took over the Sahkari Bhandar and they said, we'll run it, right? So one big Reliance outlet running in Lower Parel, not by the employees of the company, but being run by the residents, and an SOP being put in place by the company to say, you know what, okay, if this is going to be the new normal, then this is how we're going to run it. And through lockdown, not a single day of disruption. So all these ideas came not from the management. All these ideas didn't come down top down like we are typically used to. This bubbled up, right? At Spencer Retail, we had, the employees coming up and saying, why don't we hire Uber for our delivery? Because we are stuck, right? The police, as Parul said, they were stopping every delivery person. But Uber was under essential services. So they said, take an Uber out, 40, 50 deliveries, 1, 2 guys go together, get that done. Similarly, because customers couldn't get through phones, Tata Sky, classic example, they moved the entire call center to their house, right? 80, 90 employees were identified and the call center machinery was moved. So everybody, this was, I think, one of the few occasions where we have seen ideas coming from just about everybody. It could be the security guy standing outside. It could be, your own customer calling up and telling you, you know what, Have you thought of this? And the good part about it was people were open to receiving those ideas, right? Earlier they would say, oh, let's put it in a feedback form, right? And then we will evaluate the feedback. Somebody will go through it. Models will be run on that idea, and ultimately we'll decide, okay, this is the one to go for, right? I don't think any of us had that luxury to say that, okay, this will be tested and then deployed and then, monitored, whatever it was. Which was like, oh, this is a great idea, let's do it. So again, one of our managers said this beautifully, saying that, it's like flying a kite. There is no SOP for it, right? You just launch it and then you do what it takes to keep it up. I would say that's been the biggest learning for this.
What about you, Parul? What has it been between you and your managers?
So I must confess, it has been a struggle for the managers. And I'll speak out 2-3 issues that have come across in the forefront. See, one of the things this crisis has done and has brought into focus the gender inequality, because while women are taking all the position at the workplace, unfortunately, a large responsibility of managing the home still falls on the women. Now, in a space like e-commerce where there is genuinely 50-50 gender dynamics, it becomes a tricky space. So it's not that, a lot of manufacturing setups, you'll have less number of women. So perhaps this problem is slightly different. In our setup, it is 50-50 in every function at every level. So it became a bit of a challenge, and honestly, we had to specify it to the managers. And I'll give you an example where, so generally, for example, in Zoom meetings, the lunch hours were defined, to go as you go along. 1 to 2 is a lunch hour, and then we regroup. We had to specify and tell managers because it didn't register with them. No, you have to give an hour before because someone has to cook the meal for people to eat the lunch. And someone has to clean up after the lunch gets over. And while if you are a male, your wife may be doing it, for females it's not the case. And I'm not being biased towards men, no offense meant, but unfortunately that is the situation in a lot of households, especially in our age bracket that e-commerce hires. A lot of them are either new mothers or very young mothers or very young children, really. So the kids' dependence on mothers is very, very high. So, there were times when we had to do meetings with managers and tell them, you know what, if the kid is wailing in the background, no matter how the dad works or how much he tries to console, the child will not stop till the mother butts in, which means you have to stop the meeting. You have to recognize that mothers are not fathers and fathers cannot be mothers. So, it was a very difficult phase, the initial 15 days where at the risk of sounding rude, we had to define few of those things for people because it did not come in very naturally. And while from a communication perspective, or an intent perspective, everyone does ask, how are you doing, everything well, and no one wants to be rude. Some realities just don't register with other people. Or the other set of the population that we have in our teams are very youngsters who are, fresh out engineering grads who are working in, IT setups, or the technology guys who are living as PGs. So we had to check with these guys, are you eating regularly? Because their food supplies were impacted. It did not register with the managers till we actually sent in a checklist that please check with your teams. Are they having lunches and dinners? Because, typical engineer, you'll be working through the night, you'll forget to eat. In the morning, you are eating some crap like a Maggie or getting a delivery done by a Swiggy. But unfortunately, this wasn't happening during the initial days. So, purely from an operational perspective, it sounded very rude. Some of the managers came back and said, do you really think you're nuts? Or is this a question to ask? I said, yes, this is a question to ask. You have to check with your guys. Are you eating your fruits? Are you eating your vegetables? Because, immunity is the only thing you need to build. But, new guys, when they come in their first jobs, spoiled and pampered from families, haven't lifted a finger ever in their life or cooked in their life.
It was a difficult time. There are so many engineers working in our setups who actually eat 3 days a meal in the office. It's not a joke. And when the office is not working, someone had to check whether these guys were eating at all properly, not eating, how are they working, what's happening. So, I think the manager's role kind of evolved over a period of time. From an HR perspective, if I talk about it, see, from an employee engagement earlier on, while it was a 50-50, 50% the initiatives or the ideas were coming from HR and perhaps the execution was with managers. I think that balance shifted drastically during these last 3 months where 80% had to be run by managers. And, as HR, you could suggest few things to the managers, but they had to really take care of it. So for the new managers, it was really, really difficult to come up the curve. But I would agree with Danish that some of them were really resilient and really came up the curve very quickly. Um, just realizing that empathy had to come in, that my situation is different and someone else may be going through a completely different situation at their home place. So I think what has happened in last 3 months is, as a manager, I'll give a small example which has stuck in my mind is, as HR, when you do meetings like talent management, for example, for years I had been screaming at managers that, think beyond the numbers, think beyond the sales numbers, whether this guy is actually doing anything new for your business. But it never registered. But in last 3 months, the fact is the numbers were zero for everyone. They were zero for everyone. So the managers were forced to think beyond the numbers, that life is more than just the numbers. If I'm running an HR process, and I'm just taking an example of one HR process, if you have to identify a talent, what beyond the sales number or any other number, what beyond that, how do I recognize a talent who is not doing his or her numbers? And that, in my mind, has been the biggest change because of this entire crisis. People are just not numbers. Businesses are just not numbers.
I do hope you continue to have the same. It should not be that now it's all over, so let's get back to the old routine.
Yeah.
What about you, Danish? What has been your experience with your managers? I mean, you've been on the learning and development front. So what was it that you were facilitating with your managers?
When it came to my managers, now typically most of them are store managers, and they are people who've grown up the ranks because of their operational expertise. Now, when it comes to behavioral or managerial or leadership styles, as we call it, uh, the cognitive capability of store managers, I wouldn't say it's low, but in the entire retail industry as a whole, this element is at a very nascent stage. So, building in them capabilities like empathy, like Parul also mentioned, becomes very, very critical. So I've actually worked on things like that, building in them emotional intelligence, uh, conducting workshops on how do you build learning agility in yourself and then promote that in your respective teams. That has been quite a challenge for me. And over a season, and thankfully, because of the lockdown and the stores being shut, it gave me an opportunity. I also had an opportunity, since we were under lockdown, to do a little bit of an engagement event as well, wherein for the stores which opened, say 1 week post the store opening, we had these informal catch-up sessions with the entire team together. And interestingly, what was noticed was that if the manager looked optimistic, the entire team looked optimistic. If the manager seemed worried about COVID, the entire team appeared jittery and scared in that respect. So this gave us an insight into how much the leadership style of that particular store manager impacts the entire team. And then, of course, you can use those learnings to call them aside, talk to them, counsel them, and then also have one-on-ones with the people who report to them, so that they know that we are all in this together. And a lot of my work has revolved around, since I also come from a coaching background, personally coaching people one-on-one. We have an employee assistance program as well, and for which employees can connect. But there were people who were reaching out to me directly saying that, can you, counsel me, and I'm not feeling good about the scenario. And they would have a conversation for an hour and they would go back feeling better. So that's been my interaction with my employees over the past couple of months.
Lovely, Danish. Actually, you answered one of the questions raised by what in the chat box on employee engagement. Uh, for us, what we did as organization, because we are part of the Omnicom group, so that's like in 80 odd countries with 400 different offices or different companies. So what we tried to drive right through the organization, and of course India was very different, because in terms of our culture, in terms of the way we approach um, a certain aspect or a certain delivery, uh, what we did is, of course, we ran two very large surveys. Okay, we used a third party called Glint to run this survey to understand, basically to understand what is the kind of diagnostic tool we can create or formulate to dimensionalize the different priorities that employees will have. And based on that, we said, let us define what should be the manager who works with these very same employees. So looking at these dramatic shifts, what we did is, understanding the crisis culture, we tried to understand what is the kind of employee we have sitting in front of us. We categorized them into 4 different large blocks. One is, because we are also now coming back into our next plan of action, that is returning to work. Okay, so we categorize them into ready resumers, people who are, who want to get back to work. The other category was somebody who values and is very conscious about taking the next step forward. The other is the static sustainer, and of course, the anxious evaluator. So using these 4 blocks of where we could peg all our employees, we started engaging with all our managers so that they could prepare their employees not only to work better. Of course, we did a lot of training programs. I used to ensure that every Tuesday and every Wednesday, I'm having one of my managers conduct a webinar and uh, conduct a program on one aspect of PR, so that the others are learning. Because while you're at work, you're not getting a chance to learn. So we said, let's also building learning sessions. So we did that. And then along with this, we tried to coach our managers on how they should work with their employees, understand not today, but what is going to happen tomorrow. So the 4 blocks were explained to them. And we have kind of prepared ourselves now for the next stage, returning back to work. But globally, very interestingly, there is one more thing that is happening, but where as an agency, globally, we are thinking of tomorrow moving to a more work from home pattern, because we find that this work from home has become very productive, especially in a place like Bombay, where commuting to work is a huge issue. Being available all the time, it's a burnout issue, but then that's also to an advantage. So this is what we have tried to move our management thinking towards, and get everybody to feel first that they belong to the company, and what is happening for all of us, just not to the top management, but right to the bottom level. And then the next step that we have also taken over here, and that is something I really would like to share with all of you, that while moving everybody or helping everybody navigate this disruption, we have kind of built in a new employee re-engagement strategy where we are saying when you come back to work, this is the new you. We have changed designations. Like I myself have changed my own designation to being a chief talent officer. No, I'm a chief people officer because over here we're saying employee is what matters. It's the people that matter, you know. So we are trying to bring in a continuity and make it look that, what shall I say, make it look that, you know, things haven't changed. We just took a break and now we are back and everything continues the same way. All right. One last question. I think we've just got about 10 minutes left. Would you all like to just share with us, starting with you, Kunal, as to 3 things that you feel are not going to be the same? While I'm promoting that, you know, we're going to navigate thinking that everything has not changed. But what do you think can change? Maybe 3 things on the top of your mind.
The way we work definitely has changed. A lot of I would say initiative has changed at the employee level. Earlier it was a lot of direction led. Oh, you have to do this, somebody else has to do this. This is the way things are going to work. This is the SOP. It's been laid down in stone because, you know, 3 generations before you have done it this way, and this is the best way to do it. I think that's changed. A lot of learning for everybody in terms of, you know, how dynamics really work in an organization, how hierarchies impede or how hierarchies help you manage organizations has changed. And that's not going to be the same. No way organizations are going to return back to the hierarchical structures that were there earlier. Employee engagement has changed. As Parul mentioned,
would you say that?
Danish,
How would you say that?
I think empathy was a word earlier which was just used. We have seen that in practice, right? As she said, managers have learned. It's become imperative that the manager has learned to be empathetic. Every job description we get today talks of EQ. That used to not be the case earlier. Tucked in somewhere in the corner, maybe saying, okay, you know, high EQ, but now it's become front and center. Agility has become one of the things to look for in a manager. And when we say agility, it's not just speed, it's just being able to adapt. I think the word agility should be renamed as adapt, right? It's been sheer adaptation on the basis of what do I do today? As Parul said, you know, Bombay is on today, Bangalore is off today. What does one do? It's very easy to toggle switches off on systems, but it's not so easy to toggle switches on people. And I think that adaptability has increased for everybody. So if I were to summarize, the way we work will change, empathy front and center, and adaptability amongst employees. I think these are the 3 things that are definitely going to change.
What about you, Parul?
So, while I don't want to sound cynical about these things, I think, you know, in general, people's resistance to change is so high that my worry is the moment the things are seemingly normal, everyone is going to revert back to earlier ways of doing things. And I hope it's not the case. I genuinely hope so, because few good things have also come out of this crisis. Like EQ he mentioned, few managers being agile. I mean, these are the things which are coming up, bubbling up, evolving. But 1 or 2 things which I really think has changed, not just from a work perspective, but home perspective. And that's going to be a long-term impact on every industry, is gender diversity, which has always been a theme around a lot of organizations, and they have taken it up that, you know, so much percentage has to be women and blah 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 and so on and so forth. But now the conversations around gender diversity are going to evolve drastically because of this work from home thing coming in. A lot of organizations are adapting it, which gives more opportunities for people to think about work women especially who couldn't earlier on. And organizations were close to the idea despite several push and pull. Now they are seemingly open to it. The second part is gender diversity. When I say the conversations around it are going to really change, because it's not just about doing a job, it's about sharing responsibilities at home and at workplace. So there are few things which we take for granted without even questioning it. uh, and we are all a part guilty of that whole hierarchical structures and patriarchal structures. They are being questioned. They are being questioned all across, whether they are at home or at workplace. So I think this is one area that's genuinely undergo, hopefully in a positive direction as we come out of these crises, which I'm really hoping for. Again, nothing against the men, they are all my good friends. But this has really come out of it. The second is, which I've realized, is intuitive leadership is what is taking over now, because during these times, as Kunal kind of alluded it earlier on, nowadays decisions are based on secondary data, because there is an absence of primary data, absence or a lag of availability of primary data. So managers are really forced to take decisions based on secondary data, which was not the case earlier on. Which means, however we are doing, defining the competencies or doing talent management or hiring, those are going to evolve. They will happen slowly and steadily. I'm not saying that it will happen tomorrow, but that point is going to gain more significance as we go in our journey. So those are the two things which I think. And third point that I think is going to evolve from managers' perspective and also from an HR perspective, really, is compensation. Because a lot of things have happened in the last few months which have been a point of debate, contention, talk over, in a sense of increments, bonuses, PF contribution, how much is good, bad, tax slabs. So a lot of compensation rejig would also happen in the coming few years, with an intent of ensuring that the employees are the beneficiary of it. And it's just not the COVID thing, it's also, as I said, a lot of macro environment kind of contributing to it. But in my mind, those are the three things which hopefully will change for better as we go along.
Beautiful. I like it. That's a woman speak. Yes. What about you, Danish?
So one thing, of course, will that will change, which comes to the top of my mind, is our definition of the office. You know, earlier we used to say home is where the heart is. Now it's home is where the office is. So, uh, the way we define our offices and how do we manage this thin line between our personal and professional selves is never going to be the same again. And that, is something that managers and people need to embrace. That's one difference which I see. The second one is earlier, like even if you study in different psychological theories, like for example, in DISC, we actually measure the work mask of a person. You're a different person at home, or you're a different person under stress, and a different work mask altogether. Now those different images or personas have merged, and preparing people to embrace their own selves is the first step that we need to work on. And then also work on building capability of organizations and the managers within to embrace these new people who have kind of emerged during the lockdown, and they will be here to stay. That's the second one. And I think the third one would be the definition of customer centricity. I think the lockdown has taught us that, and this is what my partner shared with me yesterday, is that right now we have more hands and less mouths because the consumption is that low. So, focusing on what was driving customer centricity yesterday is now just a hygiene factor. And organizations really need to identify what differentiates them from everybody else and focus on those trends to ensure that sales happen. Now, that's something which fortunately my organization has done, with the entire capability of pivoting to the entire omni-channel model. It's something which was in thoughts, but now it's come into practice. And now, as the stakeholder of behavior with customers, I need to again revamp the entire customer journey and revamp the way in which we can delight them and be more empathetic towards them. So those are the three things which come to mind.
You've just said the word I want to say, is because what has happened over here is empathy has become very important. And today, for me, my takeaways from this whole experience of the last 4 months is, what is important is my employees want to be safe. They really want to be safe. They are not asking, what is my career development or what is my salary? They want to be safe because, one, they have seen the job losses that have been going across everywhere. They want to be safe in terms of their own health. So they are looking for a security, and they are giving a company's values, the values of a company, a lot of priority. Today, every worker, especially amongst us, is looking to see what are the values of my company? What are they thinking? Yes, we say people are our assets. Do they actually think that people are our assets? Because that need for an organization to be empathic, to follow empathy is very important. And of course, diversity, like you mentioned, Parul, and a lot of values that have to be inclusive. These are very important today that we see in amongst the new people that we have, because we have to build in new drivers of employee engagement. The manager, it's employee engagement today is just not left with the HR or with the learning and development person, but it is also with every manager that is there, because we have to go down to the last level. I don't know, I know we've just overshot our time by a few minutes, but we have to be able to reach down to that last level. And we all need to be safe. I can only say that. If there is anything more that, which I have missed out in this, I would love you all to add it. But yes, we all need to be safe in our health, in where we are traveling to work, safe in knowing that yes, we still have a job at the end of the day. We still need to know that our employer works for me and I will work for my employer. So empathy is very important, and intelligence becomes very important. So these are the two things we are telling all our people. Keep reskilling yourself, keep upgrading your own knowledge to be up with the times, because yes, there's been a distinct shift. We need to be agile. I can never take that term away. Kunal, you've said one of the best things, because it's not only agile in terms of our own physical being, but mentally. Adapting is become so important. And with this, I'd really like to thank all of you panelists for joining me in this conversation. I'm just checking the chat box to see if there is any questions. No, I don't see there are any questions. So Arvind, over to you.
Jayashree ma'am, there were two questions which I have sent you personally.
Oh, you have? I'm sorry. My apologies. I'm just going to have a look at it. Okay. Okay. Maybe Kunal, you could answer this. How will the future hiring be post-global COVID economical impact, especially in the year of 2021? This has come from Danish Irfan.
Yes. So I'll give you a couple of statistics, and I think that those will answer for itself. We just did a survey, and this was our global body which sort of runs executive search across the world, which is the AESC, saying, what are the three most important things for CEOs now? Still, right? COVID has happened, and this is a global phenomenon. Everybody's been impacted. So what are the three most important things? talent still turned up at 82%, right? So that has not changed significantly. It's been an above 80% number now for the last 10 years, which means the term that everybody's favorite term, war for talent, continues. How will that change is, I think a lot of us have to play our parts in that. It had become a very quantitative assessment of talent. What have you done? What has been your last 20 years? Can you give us 5 examples? Can you give us this? Can you give us that? As I said, this is going to go through the COVID filter. If talent has survived COVID, whichever way, that is the talent to hire. It's very simple. And I don't see a significant change. Yes, organizations will rethink the composition of talent. Various themes will emerge. As Parul said, diversity will emerge. The fact today that not everybody is getting to office today means my talent pool is wider, right? My talent pool is no longer Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai. My talent pool is now Asansol, Kharagpur, Jaipur, Nasik. It could be anywhere. And that, I think, opens up a whole new vista. It opens up a whole new way that we need to come up with evaluating these people, making sure that we're evaluating the right things in these people, and making sure that they get there.
Thank you, Kunal. And Niyati asked a question on engagement. I think we've all spoken about that time and again. We've broken it down into various kind of portions, and we've spoken about engagement. But a very interesting question has just popped up. What do you see for the future for the students, who many of them are sitting over here? Because hiring is frozen, and options are there, but where will they go and find them? That's the way we have. How do we help them look for it?
Maybe I can attempt to answer this one. There are no
Yes.
right or wrong answers to it, but I think what has evolved during this time is it's not a time of specializations anymore. The more skills you have, the better options or chances you have. Future. We really don't. We can only make intelligent guesses out here. If nothing else, this time has taught us that it's all in the moment. We really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring in. Although it's a traditional wisdom, we have been taught this for ages, but this time has kind of brought that on. So really, as students, I think, that time is passé when you are a finance specialist and therefore will not know anything about how marketing happens, or the fact that you are an HR professional and hence don't know how the balance sheet of the company is moving, are really passé. So the more the time at hand, the more skills you acquire, the better equipped you will be.
If Danish, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, given the current scenario, now, in Simsr, we have a very entrepreneurial course, a very strong entrepreneurial course, which we have. And I think this could be a great opportunity to, for students to think of ideas which may solve the current problems. Because given the way how the millennials have risen up to acclimatize to the current situation, I'm sure the ability of students who are currently in the college is of that caliber, wherein they can also think of the opportunities which no one is really catering to in the market, and come up with B plans of their own. I'm sure we are in this phase of being more Atmanirbhar. Maybe this could be a great time to give an impetus to the entrepreneurial spirit that we all have.
Yeah, so I can only tell this. Sorry, I can only tell the students, look for what new has started. You know how online gaming started? When we had the swine flu, people were at home, stuck. They created online gaming. So look at what are the new industries that are starting. I've got people who are coming to me and saying, can you get me an intern? Can you get me something? Because research, data, data centers, these are all coming up. These are all the today's companies that, I mean, businesses or kind of ventures that are coming up. Go look for that kind of a new business that is starting. Yes, you can always go back to the manufacturing, go back to the consumer, go back to fashion. Retail is the new, has been for some time the new world. Look for those new sectors that are opening up. That is where you are going to be able to find your position, because y'all are people who carry today's knowledge, today's skills, and they are all open there for you. Yes, EduTech?
Yes, true.
I'll just take a moment to add to this one. In 1996, when I passed out, Google was just an idea, right? Google was just an idea. Today, Amazon was what, 2 years old?
Yeah.
Right? And today, where are these businesses? I mean, if you listen to the latest World Economic Forum predictions for graduates passing out in 2025, they would, in the course of their career, change 25 jobs and 8 careers. That's the prediction. 70% of those jobs have not been created yet. There is no template for this, guys. There is no template for this, right?
Absolutely.
Go out there, figure out what you can do. Don't hesitate to get your hands dirty. I think we all suffered from this in the initial part, saying that, okay, I'm a graduate and I'm an MBA and I've, graduated from this top B school. And day one, am I expected to deliver letters? Or am I expected to write memos? That's not true any longer. As Parul said, the content of your job, the ask of your job has changed.
Absolutely.
And it is changing every day, it's changing every hour. As we all, I think, highlighted on this panel, adaptability is the key to survive. If you don't adapt, you will not survive.
Now that's more like a personal question. The panelists on the new HR batch, I think we'll take that out offline after this discussion, because we've gone more than 15 minutes beyond our time.
Yes, ma'am.
That Himanshi, you can ask them to get in touch with any of us.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was a very insightful session. I hope everyone must have got a lot of insights for HR. And to add on, it was a very hot topic as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Kunal, Parul, Jayashree ma'am, Danish. It was really great to have you all on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.